The gates haven't opened yet, but one army is already beaten, not by swords, not by numbers, by doubt, by exhaustion, by a commander who understood something most people still don't. The real battle begins long before anyone steps onto the field. And if that sounds ancient, look closer. Your career, your habits, your impulses, your relationships, most of your defeats are decided before the moment you call the test. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. More than 500 years ago, during the violent chaos of ancient China's warring states period, survival belonged not to the strongest, but to the clearest mind. Kingdoms rose and fell like sparks in dry grass. Alliances shifted overnight. One bad decision could erase a dynasty. In that world, generals were not motivational speakers. They were architects of order, standing inches away from collapse. Somewhere in that world, a strategist named Sun Tzu wrote a text so compact it could fit in your hand, and so dangerous it outlived empires. The art of war is often treated like a manual for aggression. It isn't. At its deepest level, it is a philosophy of discipline, a psychology of victory, a method for arranging your mind, your environment, and your actions so precisely that conflict becomes unnecessary, or when it does come, it is already decided. And here's the first misunderstanding most people make. They think victory is dramatic. They imagine the speech, the breakthrough, the final push, the glorious moment when everything changes. Sun Tzu would say that's childish. The visible victory is only the receipt. The purchase was made much earlier. That idea should unsettle you, because if he's right, then your failures in discipline are not happening when you break the habit. They're happening in the invisible hours before, when you leave temptation in reach, when you sleep too little, when you let emotion rehearse the same weakness, when you confuse intention with preparation. This is where Sun Tzu stops being a military thinker and starts sounding almost like Stoic philosophy, not because Stoicism and strategy are identical, but because both are obsessed with the same question: what can be controlled before chaos arrives? Ancient wisdom, whether Chinese or Roman, keeps returning to this point. The undisciplined person wants courage at the moment of crisis. The disciplined person builds a system that needs less courage in the first place. What he wrote next changed everything. The victorious warrior wins first and then goes to war, while the defeated warrior goes to war first and then seeks to win. Read that again, because that sentence quietly destroys modern self-improvement culture. Most people live like defeated warriors. They wait until they are in the arena to become disciplined. They wait until the deadline to focus, until the argument to become calm, until the craving to practice self-control, until the financial crisis to learn restraint. The victorious warrior wins first and then goes to war. This is not just strategy, it is psychological architecture. Sun Tzu is saying that outcomes are shaped upstream. Long before performance, there is preparation. Long before action, there is arrangement. Long before temptation, there are habits. If you want to understand discipline at a deeper level, stop asking, how do I stay strong in the moment? Ask, what conditions am I creating that make strength easier or weakness inevitable? That sounds obvious. It isn't, because modern culture worships intensity and ignores structure. We celebrate the dramatic comeback, the all-nighter, the last-minute heroics. But these are often signs of prior disorder, not greatness. And here's a debatable statement that some people will hate. Needing constant motivation is usually evidence of poor system design, not deep ambition. Think about your own life. If your phone is beside your bed, your mornings are already compromised before consciousness fully arrives. If junk food sits in the kitchen, self-control becomes a daily knife fight against your own environment. If your schedule is chaos, discipline turns into emergency improvisation. And emergency improvisation is not discipline, it's damage control. This is one reason Sun Tzu feels strangely close to modern Stoicism. Stoic philosophy teaches that peace comes from mastering what is within your control. Sun Tzu adds a harsher edge: control what you can before events force your hand. The Stoic asks, what depends on me? Sun Tzu asks, why did you wait this long to decide? And here's where most people get it wrong. They treat discipline as a personality trait, as if some people are simply born with iron self-control while others are doomed to negotiate with their impulses forever. But discipline is not mainly a trait. It is a design principle. It is the art of reducing friction for what matters and increasing friction for what doesn't. Want to write? Put the notebook on the table before you sleep. Want to train? Lay out your shoes the night before. Want to stop doom scrolling? Remove the app, log out, add friction. These sound like small things because ego loves dramatic solutions. But ancient wisdom rarely flatters the ego. It asks a humiliating question. If your life is ruled by tiny repeated decisions, why are you waiting for a grand transformation? A surprising fact: elite military units, surgeons, pilots, and high-level athletes all rely on ritualized preparation, not because they lack confidence, but because confidence is unreliable under stress. Procedure protects performance when emotion fails. The disciplined person doesn't trust the future version of themselves to magically rise. They prepare for the possibility that under pressure, they may become smaller, weaker, less rational. So when Sun Tzu says the victorious warrior wins first, he means the battle is preloaded. The terrain has been studied, supplies secured, emotions cooled, options narrowed, weaknesses anticipated. The win happens in maps, routines, logistics, and mental order. And if that's true, then what is your life really made of? A series of battles or a series of preparations? But there's something even more shocking. Sun Tzu doesn't stop at preparation. He wants something far colder, far more disciplined than bravery. Sun Tzu writes, "He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight." This may be the least romantic lesson in all of philosophy and one of the most powerful, because the immature mind thinks discipline means always pushing, always enduring, always saying yes to struggle. But real discipline also includes refusal, restraint, timing, the wisdom to not waste yourself. You see this in modern life everywhere. People call it ambition when it is often compulsion. They call it hustle when it is disorganization wearing expensive language. They call it loyalty when it is fear of confrontation. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every opportunity deserves your time. If you react to everything, you control nothing. And yes, here's the controversial part. A huge percentage of what people call productivity is just undisciplined movement, activity without strategy, busyness without thought. Many people are not exhausted because life is demanding. They are exhausted because they are fighting on 10 fronts they should have abandoned months ago. Sun Tzu's discipline is not just about doing more, it is about doing less with greater precision. That is why his psychology of victory feels almost surgical. He asks you to remove emotional vanity from action, to stop proving things unnecessarily, to stop entering contests that drain your position. This has a deeply personal side. How many times have you fought the wrong battle in your own mind, trying to overcome temptation through raw willpower instead of changing your habits, trying to fix burnout by becoming more disciplined instead of admitting your structure is broken, trying to win approval from people whose standards are designed so you can never win? This is where Stoic philosophy and Sun Tzu meet on dangerous ground. Both reject emotional impulsiveness. Both challenge the fantasy that freedom means doing whatever you feel. In reality, the person ruled by impulse is not free. They are occupied territory. Read that sentence internally, *occupied territory. What happens when your day is conquered by notifications, cravings, resentment, and distraction? What exactly remains of your sovereignty? Self-improvement often gets marketed as self-expression. Sun Tzu would call that naive. The deeper task is self-command, not suppression for its own sake, but command directed toward clarity. You don't need to crush emotion. You need to stop letting emotion act as a general. Practically, this changes everything. It means you should choose your battles in advance. Decide which goals deserve your best attention. Set hard limits around time, energy, and inputs. Build habits that make important action repeatable even when mood fluctuates. And perhaps most difficult of all, practice strategic withdrawal from useless conflict, from ego contests, from digital overstimulation, from environments where your lower nature is constantly baited. Because this is where it gets interesting. When you stop fighting everything, you suddenly have power for what matters. Conservation is not weakness. In many cases, restraint is the purest form of strength. Sun Tzu writes, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." And elsewhere, he gives the principle that completes the picture. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Now the philosophy is complete. Know the enemy, know yourself, win without fighting. These are not separate ideas, they are one discipline seen from three angles. First, know the enemy. In modern life, the enemy is rarely a person. More often, it is a pattern, your distraction, your vanity, your need for immediate relief, your inability to tolerate boredom, your habit of waiting to feel ready. These are not moral failures in a melodramatic sense. They are strategic vulnerabilities. If you refuse to study them, you remain predictable to them. Second, know yourself. This is where philosophy becomes uncomfortable. Most people do not know themselves nearly as well as they think. They know their preferences, their opinions, their self-image. That is not the same as self-knowledge. Self-knowledge means knowing under what conditions you become weak, reckless, lazy, reactive, defensive, or deceitful. It means studying your own collapse with the same seriousness a general studies terrain. Ask yourself, when do I abandon discipline? Is it when I'm tired, lonely, praised, criticized, overconfident, rushed? What story do I always tell right before I betray my own standards? Just this once. I deserve a break. I'll start tomorrow. If you know the script loses power. Third, subdue the enemy without fighting. This is the highest level. It means creating a life where many battles never occur, not because you became superhuman, but because you became intelligent. You remove the trigger, you simplify the system, you prevent the conflict. You stop negotiating with predictable chaos. This is why discipline is so often misunderstood. People imagine it as constant inner violence, one part of you screaming at another. But the finest discipline feels quieter than that. It is not endless combat. It is alignment. It is making fewer decisions badly. It is arranging your world so your better nature has the home field advantage. And suddenly, Sun Tzu's psychology of victory looks less like warfare and more like a philosophy of life. In that sense, it speaks to modern Stoicism, to habits, self-control, to the entire project of self-improvement. The deepest victories are often invisible. No applause, no audience, no dramatic soundtrack, just a person who no longer keeps placing themselves in front of the same firing squad. Think about the strongest people you know. Are they always the loudest, the most aggressive, the most visibly intense? Or are they the ones who seem strangely unshaken because they have already done the work before the pressure arrived? That is the emotional peak of Sun Tzu's ancient wisdom. Discipline is not merely endurance in chaos. It is the prevention of unnecessary chaos. It is psychological sovereignty. It is living in such a way that when the moment comes, you are not scrambling to become someone else. You simply reveal the order you built in private. So what does winning before the battle actually mean? It means your morning begins the night before. Your courage begins in your habits. Your calm begins in what you refuse to consume. Your self-control begins in what you keep out of reach. Your future begins in the structures you repeat when no one is watching. And if most of life is decided before the visible moment, then what exactly are you preparing for right now? Go back to that first image. The gates haven't opened, but one army is already beaten. Now strip away the armor and banners. Replace the battlefield with your room, your desk, your kitchen, your calendar, your search history, your bedtime, your morning routine. That is where most victories are lost. Sun Tzu does not ask you to become fearless. He asks you to become prepared. He does not ask for emotional theatrics. He asks for disciplined arrangement. And that is good news because preparation is available to you right now, not someday, not after a breakthrough, not after motivation descends from heaven. Tonight, before you sleep, choose one battle you keep losing, just one. Maybe it's your phone in the morning. Maybe it's the habit that wrecks your focus. Maybe it's your inability to say no. Maybe it's your reactive temper. Then ask the Sun Tzu question, how can I win before it begins? Can you remove the trigger, add friction, change the terrain, decide in advance, reduce the number of choices, replace a bad habit with a better default? This is not glamorous. It is better than glamorous. It works. Try this for 7 days. Come back and tell me what changed. Because once you see life this way, you can't unsee it. The argument before the argument, the relapse before the relapse, the wasted day before the wasted day, the victory before the victory. You begin to notice that what looked like fate was often structure. What looked like weakness was often environment. What looked like lack of character was often lack of design, and that realization is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it removes your excuses. Liberating because it gives you back power. Most people will spend their entire lives trying to be strong at the moment of temptation. The wiser path is to become hard to tempt. Most people will keep fighting the same battles and calling that persistence. The wiser path is to stop entering avoidable wars. If this shifted something in your thinking, subscribe. We go deeper every week. Win in private first.